We heard a lot about belonging and identity from the first speaker of the proposition. And I want to talk about belonging and identity too. But before I do that, I want us to remember one thing, and we didn't really hear much about this in the first speech. And that is that parents are for a child. A child is not for parents. That is the direction we need to be thinking about when we think about this motion. We want to hear about why the role of parenting must be directed towards the child, and not that the child is an afterthought. No, sir, is an afterthought in this debate. So, when we think about that, we're often told, when we think about families and biological roots, men and women who are married and bringing up children, we're told the gender doesn't matter so long as there's love. So long as there's love for the child, so long as there's a social understanding of the place of the child in a loving relationship. But love, I'm afraid, isn't enough. Love is a commitment. It's not just a feeling. It's something that defines us, and children need a mother and a father, even if the love isn't strong enough, or the love between the couple is there, but they still have no maternal role and no paternal role. Well, why is that? Why is that important? Why should that be? Okay, isn't that rather reductivist? Well, I think what we need to do is think, what is it to deprive somebody of a mother or a father? What is it to, no sir, what is it to deprive somebody of their biological mother or father? We heard mention of surrogacy. We heard mention, I think, of donor insemination. In fact, if one looks at gay parenting or any of these magazines, one will see a great deal of advertising for this way of bringing children into the world. Now, that is included, as the first speaker said, in the idea of gay parenting. So gay parenting of this kind necessarily involves a rupture of a child's bond, biological and otherwise, with his or her mother. If you want a case of this, Elton John, probably David Furnish, probably the most famous homosexual couple. Well, how did they get their children? They got a donor egg from one woman, that's your genetic mother. They have a gestational mother to gestate the baby, and neither of those women will have any role in the child's upbringing whatsoever. So what happens when that child, no sir, what happens when that child starts to grow and starts to wonder, who is my mother? Who am I? What is my identity? Well, it's been fragmented. It's been radically fragmented because somebody has chosen for their own lifestyle to say, you don't deserve that. You don't need that bond. It's irrelevant. Okay? And the couple, the gay couple, Furnish and Elton John, well, the biology matters for them because they've donated their sperm. They want a biological link and a bond and a child they can say is theirs, but that child cannot have a mother and cannot say, that is my actual mother. We see all these programs on TV, people tracing their families, tracing do that. This is all ripped off for these people. It's irrelevant. So, on that basis, we can see that there is an inherent harm in this kind of bringing about of children. Children are not seen as a gift in this sense. There's a commodification going on. There's a womb for hire. There's an egg donation going on. Not a donation, actually. A lot of money is paid for it. So even before we get to the empirical studies, well, I haven't got enough time, but we can talk after. Possibly. There is a great deal of empirical evidence that suggests that children need a committed, stable, and loving family. And of course, love is very important in that context, in that committed, loving context, to give a proper sense of identity. Now, I'll come to the empirical evidence in a minute, but I think I've already shown that there's a harm involved, a very serious harm involved, before we even begin. We talk about equality, talk about things being better. You've ensured that there are harms already. Well, What about commitment? Well, it's not very fashionable to say it these days, but marriage, on every single empirical study, almost without exception, I think, comes out top. The married heterosexual couple in terms of good outcomes for children across a whole range of things. Now, if it's the case that lifelong committed marriage as a way of bringing up children is the best form, whereby the child is actually formed through the parents' love, the parents are united in a special kind of act which brings forth these children, and there are very special deep bonds which almost everybody, if they're honest, feels, and feels very strongly in one way or another throughout their life. If we accept those studies, which I think there's no reason not to, nothing seems to go against these studies, and of course they actually bear out something called common sense, which is not particularly common, it seems, when people are ideologically guided. If we accept all that, well, what do we find with the homosexual studies? Sorry, madam. With studies of homosexuals, well, commitment isn't exactly very big amongst homosexuals. Indeed, I have gay friends. Believe it or not, I have gay friends. Part of the point of being gay is not to be very committed. If you well, there are howls. One of the largest studies of same-sex couples. I like you, isn't it? We share a love of Peter Sarsted, actually, but one of the largest studies of same-sex couples revealed that only 7 of 156 couples had a sexual relationship which was totally monogamous. Most of these relationships lasted less than 5 years. Couples whose relationships lasted longer incorporated some provision for outside sexual activity. Now, possibly when we talk about commitment, we're meaning something different. A committed friendship where sex outside that friendship is accepted is what I say is not committed. Okay, maybe that's causing some confusion. But again, the levels of commitment, if we mean fidelity, are very low. And all of the studies, again, will show this again and again and again. You can read various studies from Professor Mark Regnerus, which talks about this kind of thing and its effect on children. No, sir. This is actually not a controversial point. Any of you can go and look it up. You might not like to hear it, and you might think it's an awful thing to say, but it's actually very, very common. There's a very high breakup rate. We've seen it in various Nordic countries as well, even amongst those who do enter the civil unions, which is a tiny fraction. In Spain, people might say, well, if we have gay marriage, that will solve the problem. In Spain, only 3% of homosexuals wish to get married. Well, if marriage and commitment and lifelong commitment are so good, why on earth would you say, oh, gay parents must be brilliant because they do exactly what's not good for the rearing of children? We heard a bit about lone parents, things like that. Now, of course, children, adopted children, lone parents, things like that, these things happen, and we do our best to help these children, the most vulnerable children, often. There's a big difference between something bad happening and creating, via surrogacy or IVS, the very problem and the harm on the child that you then conceive. Massive difference. One is deliberately causing a harm, the other is trying to repair a harm situation. And what do the most vulnerable need? They need their roots back. They need the thing that can best replicate the very natural institution and environment that they have. Now, on the... No, sir. Madam, sorry. Sir, sorry. I'm sorry, no, I realized I wasn't looking. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Right, I'll buy you a drink later. Okay, I'll try and hurry up. Well, my second speaker will be talking a bit more. I'm afraid I haven't been able to say much, but there is a very interesting paper by Mark Regnerus, which has a great deal of data in it about the effects on parents and things. He's not making any judgments, by the way, about, you know, someone who's homosexual, someone does this, someone does that. He's just trying to record accurately the data. And I'm trying to say, you know, I think we need to all be quite realistic about certain lifestyles and whether they're actually really very compatible with parenting and all that kind of thing. So I think what I want to say at the end is, you know, what I said at the beginning. Parents are for the child, okay? And we need to think very carefully about that and the kind of wrongs that can be done to a child when you fracture parenting, when you fracture what it is to be a mother and what it is to be a father. And for that reason, and my apologies again to the gentleman over there, I will sit down. Thank you very much.